Hey, Mary.
Hi, Jordan.
Welcome to the podcast. Super happy to have you here today. Today we're going to be talking about something that you're learning more about, which is fertility awareness. Can you explain the basics of what that concept even is, of what fertility awareness means?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it means different things in different contexts. But to me, fertility awareness is more of a lifestyle. It's a way that people use things that they learn about their body and what their bodies do throughout a cyclical nature to deeply understand their rhythms. And so that includes when they're fertile and when they're not fertile. And some people can use fertility awareness for contraception. Others use it to help with conception. Other people can use it just to, gain a deeper level of awareness of their general health and well-being. And there's a lot of different methods that kind of fall under fertility awareness. So there's not just one method, which I think is confusing and what is in the general public, I guess, is that, there's only one way to practice fertility awareness, and there's actually multiple different methods with varying levels of effectiveness. So yeah, we can get into that later, but yeah, that's kind of my spiel about that.
Yeah, I think that hits me in a very interesting way because I'm sure it's more geared towards women. But just thinking of it in terms of like the cyclical nature of your own rhythms, I think that's such a important piece for both women and men, because it's kind of a term that's come up in more of the conscious culture of like a man's period in a sense. And like the fact that we don't have as physical of a representation, but that our bodies definitely go through different rhythms, and that we have our periods of change within a man's body, both in the short term and the long term. And I think it's awesome to bring more awareness to both sexes of just what your natural cycles are.
Right. And so I think for me, observing my personal cycle within the cycles of the seasons too, that's been really helpful too, to give me periods of reflection. So, what was my winter like? What was summer like for me? And so I think we can all kind of start developing these more ways that we can have kind of time to integrate and process and reflect on what this seasonal change kind of brought out in me. And so I absolutely agree. I think it'd be wonderful for anybody who's interested to kind of open up to bringing more awareness to their emotional body and as well as their physical body. So a lot of the things that I track in my cycle, and this varies for different people, but right now I'm not only tracking my fertility signs, but I'm also tracking my emotional experiences too, whether or not some days I'm feeling super focused or I'm feeling like there's no way I'm going to sit down and study this and read this book. I just want to be out and moving, and, a really deep longing, deep sadness. I feel like those emotions are very cyclical, and whether or not they have to do with hormonally what's happening in your body or just a certain experience, it's just nice for me to be able to gather more of this like linear type of data to really support me in making changes in my lifestyle. So some other things I chart are like when I go to sleep and when I wake up, because sleep has a huge impact on our bodies and our body's ability to detox and how we're emotionally feeling that day. I know I'm like super grump if I don't get like over 8 hours of sleep. So, and then I also track other things like substance use and alcohol use. And so I think what tracking has really supported me is becoming a lot more conscious about how my decisions impact my life and impact my body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's awesome. So in tracking and charting, is that a lot like journaling, and just kind of do you have a specific layout that you follow for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's like a lot of different options out there, and I found something that works for me, which is I use a paper chart. It's a 1-page chart, and I have a format. I have like a layout that I use. It's like a gridded layout, so it's really easy for me to like, check in. So the 3 fertility signs that some people observe are like basal body temperature, cervical fluid, and then some people use their position of their cervix. And so there's like, we want to make it as easy as possible, or I want to make it as easy as possible for myself when I'm tracking and charting all these things. So I've come up with a system that I like can circle things or make a check mark or write like, different acronyms for things and boxes, and then I have a space to just like free write things. So that's when I write like how my emotional state was, or like big things that I did that day, did I work all day, or did I, get outside? Was I hiking? Was I traveling? Was I like sick and miserable?
Yeah.
And so, and I start that at the first true day of my cycle. So that's like when I first start bleeding, that's cycle day 1. And then I track until the next beginning of that next cycle. So the first day of my bleed for the next cycle. So it's usually like, it varies depending upon how long people cycle for, but, around like a month. And so, after I take all this data for a month, then I go back and I look through it and I'm like, wow, I can see that this had a big impact, on my body, because I can see how it affected either my emotional body or my physical body. And then I write intentions for this new cycle. And so I love that. I love like really living within a cycle and being like, okay, well, like I get to reset this next cycle and I get to do whatever I want, and if like, it's a nice way for me to check in on my, like, I have like different health projects that I work on. And so it's a nice way for me to like check back in on those health projects and be like, oh, well, like your intentions for this cycle were, maybe to decrease alcohol consumption. And, oh, wow, but you drank a lot this cycle. And so it's like a way for me, and people do it with caffeine and things like that. So it's like just a way for me to like be accountable in my life choices and know that each choice I have and I make can add up to some really big, beautiful like openings and opportunities. And for me, I'm like a big picture learner. And so like, when I learn something new, like I want to see the global, like I want to see it at a macro level, and charting is my way of doing that as it relates to my physical health and well-being. It really gives me like this macro, this like step back view of like the choices that I've been making for that cycle. And so that's been a huge practice for me, and it's really allowed me to like really be true with some of the things that I want that maybe I'm not being super successful with, or I'm doing such a good job in this one area, and I can like really appreciate that and really like honor that process
Yeah. I think that charting, tracking, keeping notes, I think that's super important. It allows for this physical representation of what you've accomplished, what you've achieved, where you've been slipping. That is just, we feel like we can hold it in our minds, but it's not the same.
Right? It's like, I don't know what I did. Yes. I don't know what I ate yesterday, like, let alone, like maybe, I mean, usually I'm a feeler, so usually I can remember my emotions, but like to be like, oh, I had dairy yesterday. Did I have dairy yesterday? I don't know what I had. Like, so I think it, it it's fascinating for me because it's such a masculine way of trying to interpret this female fluid flow, like wild energy.
Yeah.
And it works. Like it's so it's and so it's like giving so one of my friends just recently described this as like the masculine energy is the banks, like it gives shape to the river, and the feminine energy is the river. I mean, it's wild. It's like gonna crash up against the banks, and like you don't know like where it's gonna go next, and you just have to like hold that fucking container tight.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I cuss on
Yeah.
here? Okay. I forgot to ask you that. And so it's interesting to give this kind of boundary into this shape, to this like mystery of this like feminine energy, this like feminine mystery that I think a lot of people kind of write off of like, oh gosh, I can't even understand what's going on with them, like I don't even know how to interpret them. Like, yeah, so I think it's an interesting way to play in both energy fields.
Yeah, I like giving boundaries, the idea of that, of like, because if you have it, because realizing that boundaries are important just as much as being formless is important. If you are always formless, then you're loose, you're out, there's nothing to
Right.
grab onto.
Right.
But if you allow yourself to have something to give shape. Like, I really like the idea of the banks of the river, also in the fact that the river is always changing. Like,
Right.
what those banks stay steady. And I feel like having that steadfastness, that groundedness within your own practice of self is so important, because it allows you to have something to not only grab hold of, but also to come back to.
Right. And there's many times when I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull out the last 3 charts. So it's the last about 3 months, and look at them all in conjunction together and kind of see, well, like, what are my overarching patterns? And that's been really cool. And really, really informative of my own cycle, my own intuition, and also like just honoring the flux of emotions that I feel throughout an entire cycle, and being like okay with that. I'm, there's going to be some days where I'm feeling super lonely and lost and isolated, and I feel that almost every cycle. Oh, wow, that's super interesting. I always have a day or two, at this certain time where I'm going to be experiencing, like this sense of loss, or this sense of, sadness, and so when I take that step back, and I can just really honor my process and just kind of know that that's coming, and just be like, okay, when it's there, when I'm in that day or couple of days, I'm like, okay, I'm here, like I'm just gonna be present with this is my normal, like this is my normal to experience and kind of open up in this way, and that's okay. and it's not going to be like this forever.
Yeah, I think it to me that really gives me the idea that it like would give you much more of a relationship with those feelings instead of feeling like it's just coming out of nowhere, or like it like doesn't give it quite as much weight where you get to consciously take a look at it, so it's not just this like blackness that's suddenly overtaking you out of
Right.
nowhere. You get to be
Right.
like, oh, I know what you
Like,
are.
where is this coming from? And for me, a lot of it is hormonal, and it's also energetic, and it's me going into a different energetic phase of my cycle. So personally, I know that transitioning on either side, so from the luteal phase into the follicular phase, or from the follicular phase into the luteal phase, and we can like go into those terminologies if you want
Just gotta
to,
let
but
you finish and
essentially,
then say, and what do those words mean?
so it's essentially like the beginning of a woman or a person that has a uterus and is cycling, the beginning of their cycle, and not sorry, and like, and I'm trying to be as inclusive with my language as possible, and I'm also learning a lot, and so I might go back and be like, wait, that's not how I wanted to say that. I wanted to say it a little bit differently, just because I want to use words that include people that are in all sorts of transitions and stages of life. So that's not to say that menopausal women don't still cycle, but what I'm talking about more is people that are their body is producing eggs. So the beginning part of a cycle is this like building phase. And so it's like our eggs are starting to grow, they're starting to get bigger, they're starting to produce more estrogen. And this is like, you know, energetically for me, and it's not the same for everybody. But this is also something that my charts have helped me kind of identify, is like, this is the time when I want to be around people, that I want to be like social, that I want to put myself out there. This is a time of like external experience. Like I want to fill the space externally. Whereas the second part of the cycle, it's called the luteal phase, and this is after the egg is ovulated. And if it doesn't get fertilized, then, and if it does get fertilized, your body starts producing a different hormone called progesterone. And this is more of a phase of the cycle where I want to become more internal. Like I'm really, you know, I'm growing this potential thing in my body right now. So it's like, I really want to focus inward on that. And then, you know, for me, a couple of days that I've equated to kind of maybe things that my body is experiencing is, you know, when the egg isn't fertilized, it dissolves back into the body. And so for me, what that feels like is like this grief almost, and this loss of possible potential creation, and destruction and death and dying.
Wow.
And so to also, you know, give myself space, that even if I don't know exactly when that's happening in my body, giving myself space to, and even if I'm subconsciously, right, a lot of this is more of the subconsciousness, and I'm like, oh wow, I feel really sad today, you know. And my first question now is, oh, I wonder where I am at in my cycle. And usually I have a pretty good idea about that, but you know, thinking about how our bodies just kind of go through these processes, and how we're really in tune subconsciously. And so I think different emotions can arise from that process of as well that we go through, you know, that some of us go through on a monthly basis, of like building to create some life, and then being okay when nothing, when it dies and when it like regenerates. And so it's like, it's an intense experience to like be like building. Our body's like, yes, we may, finally create something. And then for it not to actualize, then like that's its own energy in itself. And so it's like to process those energy bodies without the awareness of like, without this level of awareness, I think could be so challenging, because it's like, you don't fully understand that like your body may be going through a grieving process, and yet you're experiencing all these like grieving emotions, and you're like, what? Like, I'm not grieving. There's nothing in my life that I should be grieving right now, but yet you're still feeling them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I love that approach of like understanding of yourself and like connecting with that is like this fully large realm of possibility that you're creating every month. Like, it's very interesting to think of the difference between a man and a woman in that sense of like egg creation versus sperm creation, where it's like sperm is like just make more, just make more, just make more, whereas an egg is like this, like it's like making that one of a kind, this very special piece. And like it just kind of, here it is, use it or lose it. But
right. And then like, how can we take that energy and like create something with it, or destroy something with it, or release something with it. So like when I like menstruate, I really like to visualize things in that cycle that I'm like ready to physically let go of, because then I can like pair it to this like physical expression of my body, like literally it's leaving my body. And that's been a really empowering practice too, because I can be like, oh, you know what, that doubt that I've been feeling this entire cycle, like I'm really over that. Like I don't want that, I don't want to, I don't want that anymore. And so like, can I attach that thought or that behavior or that experience and just like let that shit go?
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important to give ourselves space, people that menstruate, to give ourselves space to consciously menstruate and have time alone to like feel the feels and to just like be in reverence of what we're physically going through, and just like honor our body and whatever we need, whether that's like more sleep, or whether that's like time alone, or whether that's like time to cry or create or paint or like whatever. I think it's really important that we try to give ourselves that gift, because a lot can come through at that time, because it's like at the end of the cycle. So we're processing and integrating a lot from throughout the entire month.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's just in like keeping track of your body, allowing yourself to be more mindful that like you're not the same every single day.
Right.
And that's something that so many people do not do, because it's just like, no, you got to get up and go. You got to get up and go. But even if you have to get up and go, you can still be a little bit more mindful of how you go.
Right.
And like connecting into where you're at and like what your body's going through. Like I've heard recently about people wearing like sleep straps and stuff and things that like read how much they slept, where their heart rate is at in the morning, and that if your heart rate is at a certain amount when you wake up, that you shouldn't train that day because you literally haven't recovered from the workout that you've had.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's like very similar to what you're doing, of just taking note of like where your body's at and how you can act in more symbiosis with your body.
Right. And it's so much more tangible than, I mean, I love the woo woo stuff. Like, I am so woo woo. But it's just, it's giving tangible properties to something that is hard to grasp sometimes for some people. And just, it's like a check-in. It's like a check-in with my body. And like, it's a tool for us to learn how to listen. Because I honestly, maybe this is happening somewhere, and if it's happening, like, so many blessings, and I want it to continue, but I don't think we're taught as children, as little people, to be able to listen to what our body's saying.
Yeah.
And there's so much wisdom that we hold in our body, and like, I believe that we're so much we're incredibly capable of self-healing if we're able to listen to our body. And that's easy, right? Like, that's so, like, listen to your body.
Yeah.
But like how?
Yeah.
How do we do that? So charting is one tool for me to do that. Meditation may be another tool for somebody to do that. You know, a journaling practice. I mean, there's so many. It doesn't have to be like, I'm like, everybody should chart. Like, I think do what's right for you, but I think that we really need to start tuning in on a deeper level and listening to what our bodies are telling us, because I think it would solve a lot of issues that we're dealing with right now, especially as it relates to the environment. So, that's like my biggest piece, is just like body literacy. So like, how are we reading? How are we interpreting the signs that our body is naturally and intuitively giving us?
Yeah, it can definitely relate to the idea that we weren't taught those things, because I can't think of any adults talking to me about that, of just how I connected with my body. So I think that's a super important piece of something that, as we as people learn that within ourselves, then we're more able to communicate that to the next generations, which I think is the hope of every generation, to go a little bit further, to reach a little bit deeper, in order to start the next generation off with more than we did.
Right. Absolutely. And I see it. I mean, I see it with gender expression, or, you know, like, I see that in our youngest generation right now. I mean, they're just so inclusive, and they have terms for all sorts of different things that I don't, like, you know, like, I can't relate to being a part of this generation. And I think it's such a blessing now that kids, younger and younger kids, feel more safe to express whatever gender they feel like expressing, despite what their biological sex is. And so it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening. And I think we just, you know, need to continue to give each other the tools to do these things. So
yeah, and I think that's the gift of the woo woo, like, where people love to, like, push that to the side as it's all nonsense, but it's the same as any other thing. Like, there's magic in all things, you know, in science and faith and religion and art. All of these things carry this element of magic and growth. And I feel like what the woo-woo really brings for us is the opportunity to dream and to think way outside of the box, because that's how you come up with really great revelations. You got to go to the weirdest, darkest areas and look around and poke and prod, and, you know, and the idea that everything that exists has come from the mind. Like, we have to think of the mind as an explorative space, as a place where, like, you should be allowed to explore all concepts.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like at, like, an esoteric level, when you don't give any form or shape to something, then there's just so much more possibility. So when you start putting it into, when you start saying like, oh, you have to do it this way, it has to look like this, you have to chart like this, then it's like limiting our tool, it's just limiting us in a way. So like, how do we have balance of like, because I've gone to workshops, spiritual workshops, and it's so formless that I leave and I'm like, what, like, how do I put that into practice?
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually take those concepts and really put them into action? And so like but then then you're left with this question of like, well, how do I do this? And then maybe you come up with a way to do it that nobody else would have thought of, but you thought of it.
Yeah.
So like there has to be this balance always, right, between like the formlessness of a concept and then being actually able to like put it into practice where it can have a really dramatic impact in your life, or at least I hope so.
Yeah. I think that's what comes up for me is like religion, and that of just like, it's so much better to give examples than rigidity of how to worship. You know, like you can do this or you can do that. No, you have to eat crackers in order to be one with Jesus. It's like, well, who came up with this one? And like exploring. Giving examples, I think, is great because it sparks imagination in a more formed manner where it's like, okay, here's one way that this can look.
Right.
And then it gives you the freedom to still explore into other areas.
Right.
But
so
go ahead.
Yeah. So just to bring it back to charting, so there's so many different ways that are available to chart right now. People are coming up with like really cute like journals, and how they like have stickers to put where I'm feeling happy this day, or I ate like really good today, or so they have like their own journals that they're then offering, and then people are kind of doing it rogue. Like I took a person's chart and I've edited it many times until I feel like it's capturing what I want. And then there's other methods that have a very strict charting practice, and there's color codes that you apply to certain times that mean certain things that and it really is it fits for some people, and then some people want a little bit more fluidity, and so they choose something different. And then there's apps that are kind of trying to support people that are really, geared towards technology, and that's the best way for them to kind of keep track of this. So I'm old school. I like charting with paper and pen, and that's just, I have a lot of reasons why I like that, but I think that there's a way to practice fertility awareness that fits within people that are coming at it from a religious standpoint. So what's called natural family planning. And so it's based in the Catholicism. And then there's also charting practices that have, they're not religiously based, but they come kind of from that lineage, and so they have there's one method that they're not going to be pro-abortion, but they're not also going to be against abortion either, but they don't really have a really outward stance on that. And then there's other fertility awareness educators and practitioners that accept everybody and want to provide this information to whoever is wanting to access it, and people that are really like for women's like reproductive justice, and so they're really fighting hard for having pro-choice, and getting information out there about hormonal contraception and the impact that it could be having on our bodies. And so I think that there's something for everybody, which is what I really appreciate about this, is that no matter kind of like where you are on your own spectrum, you can find a charting method that can meet you where you're at in your life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's good to have a wide breadth of possibilities for all the different backgrounds and schools of thought, because this is connecting more with your personal relationship to self. And I mean, we're all born with a body, but we don't really have a manual for it yet. And everybody's different. And the only person that's ever going to be in your body is you. So the more mindful you can be of that, and also having tools and ways to, be able to look at yourself in a more long-term way is, I think, would be important for everybody.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what got you into actually beginning to research this and learn more about it?
That's a great question. And I know I'm going to be getting that a lot. So I've been working on this story because it's a personal one for me, and I want to share it because I think it's important to Yeah. So I was 26, and well, everything in my life kind of changed all at once, and I sold everything I owned and decided that I wanted to go travel. And so that's what I did. And I was in my Saturn return, so that made a lot of sense looking back on it. And I was on a mission to find myself in a deeper way. And I had done all the things that the society that I lived in told me that I needed to do in order to be happy. And I just felt like there were things that I was searching for and seeking that I wasn't finding. And so for me, what that looked like is taking a big step off the cliff and into a world of unknowing and exploration and adventure. And so that was the path that I was on when I started to question my body in a different way. I started to be more interested, and I was really against kind of the system in general. And so I wanted to find natural ways of living. And so I ended up meeting a beautiful human who I fell in love with, and the story begins with love and ends with self-love. So that's how I'm phrasing it. And it was a wild adventure. It was a wild, wild ride. And Jordan, you knew me through this experience. So you have a little bit more background about it than I want to share. But this relationship ended up being very unhealthy and toxic in different ways, and very not emotionally supportive either. And so I was very disconnected from myself at this time of my life, and very dependent upon this other person for my experiences. And I ended up having an unplanned pregnancy, and ended up later deciding to have an abortion. And that was its own experience and wild ride. And so I like to share that because I think it's important to destigmatize abortion. And I think that it should be an option and a choice And it's my body, and I want to be able to decide when to create life in that way. And so after that, I went into probably like what's an alchemical understanding, the dark night of the soul. I really I was just shedding like everything, like not only my belongings, but like everything I had known to be true, you know, and I felt like my body had, you know, hadn't listened to me, and I felt like it wasn't listening to me. And I just felt like the word just disconnected from my body. Like I wasn't listening. I didn't know how to listen. And I was in so much pain at the time. Like I couldn't listen. And so I really believe that that like energy cultivation of like creating this potential life really pushed me into creating this life experience that I'm choosing now, which is to pursue fertility awareness education. So in my healing process and healing work, I was like, there has to be a way for me to reconnect to my body and reconnect to my cycles. And so, you know, I did so much research, and it was like weeding through just so much to try to find such a simple answer, I feel like. And finally I like stumbled upon somebody's page that then led me to another page, and then and I found out about fertility awareness, and that, and I was like, that this is what I want to, this should be common knowledge. This should be an option. People should be aware of this option. And I just really directed that energy that I had from, you know, an unborn life into this work, and into this like passion. And I feel like that was huge healing work for me, to be able to redirect this energy into something else that is going to, in my hope, my dream is that it's going to be supporting and helping other people, that maybe they won't have to go through this experience that I went through in order to come back into deep connection with my body. And maybe they will have to go through it, and maybe that's what will bring them to this new level of awareness that they want to be more in tune. So that was a longer story, but that's really what led me to fertility awareness, was being very disconnected from my own body, and not like having low body literacy skills, and wanting and having like a deep trust, and knowing that there was something out there like this that could help me. And so once I found out about it, I was like all in, and I want to share, you know, this information, because it's not super well known yet.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing openly about your experience. You know, holding ourselves back from communicating openly about the experience of life it does no favors to the rest of us. You know,
Right.
When we live in our truth, when we stand in it, it's more of a beacon of hope for people who are in similar situations, or have been through and don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
So I think it's super important to be able to express, you know, what we've been through, and to express it openly and own our experience, because it gives people the opportunity to see what that looks like when somebody does it, to feel it, and to realize that they can do it as well.
Right. And every time I get to tell this story, I get to rewrite it however the fuck I want to, which is empowering, to say the least. And every time I share it, there's like another layer of healing that I get to experience, too, from rewriting the story to make it be a story that's empowering to me rather than a victim, because that feels disempowering. And so, I mean, it's been a process of like rewriting the story and, how can I tell it in a way that's honoring to everybody that was involved, and also that makes me feel like empowered by sharing it. So it's a work in progress. Always.
No, I really appreciate just seeing your strength and your I can tell that you've really thought about it a lot, like just saying it began with love and ended with self-love. Like, it's such a beautiful thing to take away from something like that, because in any sort of traumatizing, however it may look, abusive or challenging or toxic, you kind of, my friend said this term to me the other day, you can either get bitter or get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of one of those moments where you can be like, oh, all men are bad, or just start to fall into these pitfalls of pushing the negativity back out of yourself instead of bringing it in, holding it, and growing from it.
You're like, it's okay, Shadow. I still love you. Like, you're not anybody else's shadow. You're mine. So I'm stuck with you for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's so much to learn from that. Like, the best teacher is experience. Just being able to walk through the coals, to get up to the flame, to feel it, to let it put its marks in you, to literally leave those scars of experience in you, and then to take those in and transmute them into what you want them to be, and something that will then be beneficial not only to your own life but to the lives of others.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for seeing that and sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I mean, it's really awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to share around the idea of fertility awareness, ways that people could get involved?
Yeah. So, so the way that I found out about my teacher was I stumbled upon our national website, and it's called Fertility Awareness Method Practitioners. It's like a FAP. I should have prepared better. Anyways, it'll pop up if you search Fertility Awareness Method, national organization. And so there's a way, if you're interested in working with an educator around this, you can put in like your location, your zip code, and see who's the closest fertility awareness educator. And a lot of, just because this is such a niche right now and there's not educators in every city, a lot of educators offer online support. And so even if you're in a place where there's not a lot of anything, you can still get support from somebody who offers online sessions. And I think for those people that are on hormonal contraception and are considering that they want to explore other options, I think fertility awareness would be an option that I would want to just highlight for people to explore. It's all natural. It's good for the environment. It's empowering. It's an awesome practice to share with a partner if you're either trying to conceive or you're trying not to conceive. It's been really fun for me to share my cycles with, well, not always fun, but with some of my partners, it's been fun because it really, like, there's just a lot of stigma right now around the term fertility awareness, because of our current political system, which is interesting in its own way. So I think that there's a lot of misconception around fertility awareness. And there's people kind of, like I was talking about in the beginning, people kind of lump every method into one method. And so there's some methods that are very not effective and that percentage of effectiveness rate is getting lumped into the larger sum. And then there's other methods that have like a 99 to 98% effectiveness rate, and so when you do a 22% effectiveness rate with a 98%, right, it's gonna affect the rating. So just know that I also want to just share that that there's a lot of different methods, and so contact a fertility awareness educator, ask them questions, see what method they teach, and I just like, it's not for everybody. I don't think that charting is for everybody. I'm not delusional like that. It takes some work and effort up front, for sure. It takes time to learn your body. For 27 years of my life, I wasn't paying attention to these things, and now I have to pay attention to these things now. And, and it takes a while to see a pattern in our bodies develop. So, for people who like just want a easy, fast fix, probably fertility awareness is not the method I would recommend. If people are just wanting to take a pill, this is not the method that I would recommend. This involves like touching your body. This involves getting very intimate with yourself. Like, this involves being real with, what you're seeing. And sometimes people aren't ready for that because maybe they've been, there's many different layers to when we're ready to see like what's maybe causing our ailments. So if you are trying to figure out the root of something that's affecting your fertility, I think fertility awareness is an amazing first step, and can be combined with like IUI or IVF, which are tech reproductive aids and assistance to helping people get pregnant. But I feel like some people jump to that before they actually know why they're maybe not getting pregnant. And so I think it's also a really good practice for people that do want to conceive in the future, and so they can really get their body in like tip-top shape before they're welcoming in a new life into it. It's changed my life, and I just want there to be more awareness about it and acceptance. Unfortunately, and I'm hoping that this is, changing, but many Western medical professionals don't know about fertility awareness, have never been taught about fertility awareness, or they may have the preconceived notion that fertility awareness is, not effective because of whatever media statistic that's been out there. But this is based in science. There is evidence that shows its effectiveness rate, and it's low tech. You literally need a thermometer and a piece of paper and a pencil. And sometimes people don't like that either. Yeah. In the world of like tech, like everything is tech. They're like, what? Like, it's like too low tech for them. So sometimes that's why, apps can be helpful. But I would just be cautious of apps that are they use predicting algorithms, because then we're really missing a real key to the fertility awareness, which is body literacy. So you're not really practicing fertility awareness if you're just putting things in an app and then letting an app predict for you. You know, you're kind of like giving your power over to this algorithm, which is, you know, is how are they making these algorithms? Like, what about if something happens in your cycle that, I mean, we're humans, we're not computers, and our cycles are not going to be the same from one month to the other. And so if something happens, they don't have an algorithm for you feeling super stressed out and it's going to push back your ovulation.
Yeah.
They're going to predict your ovulation's going to be around the same time, but your body's like, I'm not going to release my egg now. This is not a safe place. So I think, you know, I think we need to be careful about how we're introducing tech into this field as well. So I'm all for if people are like, oh, I just like, you know, I want to put my temperatures and my cervical fluid in, and it's super easy for me to do it on my phone, and I travel a lot, and you know, but then you make the judgment about when you're in your fertile phase based on your cervical fluid and based on your temperature shift, and rather than letting an algorithm do it, because like there, you know, I just people know more about their bodies than they think that they do. And it's like taking back that power.
Yeah, I love the term body literacy. Like that's the thing that stands out to me in the difference between a practice like fertility awareness and the pill. Whereas the pill, it's so unconscious. Whereas having true awareness of your body, true connection, you're bringing all of that into your conscious state. And I think it's important, like I've loved like learning from you over the years, because I think it's something that men should be aware of as well, because it allows us to be more aware of our partner's energy, of times where we should be more conscious sexually, and where we can then become more of not only a supporting role but an active role in the awareness of fertility. I mean, you know, for any guy that's listening, like a lot of men have children that they don't want because they're just not even conscious about it.
Right.
And I think that bringing awareness into ourselves, that we play a role in this as well.
Right.
And that we should also raise our own body literacy in ourselves, but that's the way we can truly start to connect with each other on a deeper level, is to get past the idea of, you know, oh, it's gross or whatever types of things that are holding us back. Like open communication about what it means to be human, about what it, like, to just be real
and to celebrate it. Like, it's so exciting. Like, my partner now is like gets excited when I'm telling him I'm, you know, in my fertile phase and I'm about to ovulate, because like I have and hold a very different energy, not only in my day-to-day but also in my sexuality. I taste different. I want different things, and so that's really been fun, because it's like I also get to like explore and being okay with wanting different things at different times in my cycle. Like, I don't want to be touched the same way when I'm bleeding than when I'm ovulating. And like, it's such a blessing to like be with a partner and to also have that level of self-awareness and to be okay with like, you know, like, this isn't how I want to be touched right now. Because like, you know, like I'm bleeding. Like, you know, like my body is purging, and it's like it's a beautiful experience, and it can also be uncomfortable because of physically what's going on. You know, it's common to experience a lot of pain, but it doesn't have to be painful. Just to kind of start to rewrite that stereotype. But I just feel like it's a fun way to like share your body even more with your partner if they like really know, like, well, why are you being like this, so and it's fun to kind of play in that energy a little bit and explore, like, the differences between the things that I desire and I want throughout different parts of my cycle. And I think that comes back to like when I was probably in high school, when I was growing up around that like early teens, I just felt like I had to be so linear in life. Like I had to, like, if I couldn't maintain this certain schedule every single day, then I was a failure. If I couldn't maintain this way of being for my entire life, then I failed. If I like I didn't allow myself for like any flexibility, and that was like heavy. It's like heavy to be like, I don't feel like doing that today, and like, can I be okay with that? And so I think observing my cycle gave me permission to be okay, because it's like, honestly, it's like nice to blame things on my body. It's like, well, my hormones are, very low right now, and I don't have time for that, and I don't want to talk about it, and I'm not cleaning shit, or maybe I want to clean everything, and so it's given me just this like breath of being, of where like I get to show up so much more mindfully, like in the present moment, and honor like where I'm at.
Yeah, that's huge. I think also celebrating differences, like you're saying, being able to change this outlook from this like shameful or private or dirty thing into like, no, this is life, celebrate it. Because like I feel in celebrating our differences, that's where we get away from these judgments on any sort of choice of life, however you choose to live, as long as you're not hurting other people, like do your thing, and we can celebrate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Mary, awesome. I really appreciate you being open and honest about your own personal story, being willing to share that. Bringing this concept into a more prominent role, allowing people to begin to think differently about their own connections with their body. I think it's something that everyone can benefit from. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really, I just love you.
I love you too.
And I'm like happy to be here sharing my passion with you and for anybody who chooses to listen.
Yeah, is there you're a student of this right now, so you're not offering any personal coaching?
So I I'm in a 2-year program with my teacher's name is Sarah Bly. She's amazing. She's based in Ashland, Oregon. Her program is called Grace of the Moon, and it's 1 out of 3 programs that are credentially recognized by our national association. And so I will be starting my 2nd year in January, and I'll be able to take on personal clients in March or February of 2020 under her guidance. So, and I'll be doing it for free / bartering for whatever you want to offer me. So if somebody is interested and they want to learn how to chart and or they want to learn how to chart for contraception, then I would love to be a resource. If it's not me who they end up working with, I can put them in contact with other fertility awareness educators that I know and that I've worked with. And yeah, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and my Instagram is Mary Aline _fertility, ALINE. And I think you'll have probably other things in the description to be able to link up
we'll
to.
Post links.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, Mary. Thank you so much for coming on. Definitely love you a lot too as a person and a being that I've gotten to share a lot of fun times with. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Earthlings.